Hello everyone, my name is Carlton D'Souza and this is Million Opinions. In today's episode, I have Ben Daniels, who is a dynamic sports coach and a PE teacher with almost 2 decades of experience. He is also an entrepreneur, a company director with thoughts to teens and level up performance. Ben Daniels, welcome to Million Opinions.
Thanks for having me.
So, how did your journey begin? How did it all start?
So I've always took a keen interest in sport. From a young age, it's sort of been how I've been able to meet people, connect with people. I've always been really competitive. People in my family have always been into sport. So I've always had a keen interest in sport in general. As I got older, I realised that my professional career wasn't really going to transpire in sort of the way that I thought it would. There was sort of a way for me to play professionally, but it wasn't quite what I expected it to be. So I was quite lucky that from a younger age, I sort of seen the opportunities in sport from a playing perspective that weren't really there. So from the age of 16, I was training full time. The guy who sort of took me under his wing and was sort of a big sort of part in my development, he was essentially telling me that there's opportunities in America to play football. So from the age of 19, I decided that I wanted to go to America and try and play over there. So my step in was coaching. So yeah, at college I did a sports course, did an NVQ in coaching, and then at 19 went to America. So the premise behind that was to go spend 6 months in America, see how I liked it, see if it was sort of aligned with where I wanted my career to go, try and get a scholarship and stay. After my first 6 months, it was an incredible experience, but I wasn't quite sold on whether I wanted to go to university there. I wasn't quite sure where I wanted my career to go. I knew it was in sport, but I wasn't necessarily sure where. So I did another 2 years in the States, so 3 years altogether. Got offered a couple of scholarships, but based on the research that I did, I decided that if I was to get a degree in the UK, it'd give me more opportunity to be able to go and whether it's teach, coach, whatever it was. I knew that if I would have got it in the UK, I would have had a better opportunity around the world. So essentially, it started from when I could kick a ball, which in England starts when you're about 3 and when you can basically walk.
How was America different from UK?
I think for me, what was the biggest difference, I come from a very low socioeconomic background. So my parents have always been like really, really hard workers, and they spend a lot of time working. There's not really a lot we can do outside of the house, other than like connecting with nature and stuff. We didn't really go on like extravagant holidays, or we couldn't go to things that cost money, the aquarium, the zoo, the theme park, stuff like that. So I lived with a lot of middle class families in the in the US. So from a class perspective, I saw like sort of a different way of living. So I came from, like I said, a place with not a lot of opportunity, and then I seen the opportunities that the kids and the parents and sort of that sort of environment, how it differed. So from a class system, I noticed how much of an impact sort of having more expendable income could have on your life, which I wasn't really exposed to. I was really grateful with not a lot growing up. So it's never really fazed me. I've never really thought about that. But then going to the other side and seeing like what it's like with a bit more expendable income, that was pretty cool. But what I liked about America in particular was how serious they take sport. Like they take it incredibly serious, even from a grassroots perspective. Now, you could argue that it can be quite toxic, like some parents are sort of living vicariously through the children. But overall, you're always going to get a percentage of people who take things to the extreme. But overall, like the money that they put into it, the effort they put into sport as a whole, I just thought it was incredible. And what I was really impressed with was in the UK, you have such a high dropout rate of girls, in particular in sport. They get to a certain age and they're a bit more body conscious. They maybe have done dancing and they're not really they don't like it anymore. Or, dancing, gymnastics can be fairly toxic if your body doesn't really fit the needs of the sport, shall we say. So you see a lot of girls who drop out and they're not really interested anymore. And there's not really an incentive to stay in sport. Whereas in the US, because like college is so expensive, there's a lot of girls who stay in sport for a longer time because their goal is like, if I'm good at this, I can get X amount off my scholarship. If I'm academically quite smart, I can get X amount off. And then the parents obviously then push the kids to be good at sport, be good academically, which is good because I think it overall makes you a more rounded person. And obviously the discipline and the resilience that you learn through doing hard things. So for me, it was what was impressive, because I've got 2 nieces and they're not really that into sport. Like, if they grew up in America, they would have arguably stayed in sport longer, and the habits that come with it, the longer you do it, the more of a innate ability it becomes. You just, that's sort of who you are then for the rest of your life. So seeing how many girls actively engaged in sport in general all the way through university, that was, to me, was what I found most impressive.
And then your journey to Dubai, UAE.
So yeah, when I got back from the States, I started my degree and I started a sports coaching company. So I was in a really unique position that I could learn sort of in a real world environment where I had my own business. I was going to banks, trying to get loans. I was getting knockbacks from schools. Things that we were learning in the classroom that people were writing down and going, oh, this is like what I could do in 5 years' time. I was doing it and learning about it at the same time. I was in a really unique position where I was learning on the go. So the business grew after like 3-4 years of like extreme hardship. But we was young and resilient. Like, when you're young and your confidence is high, you're just like, oh, it'll be fine, we'll get there in the end. So that naivety sort of got us through. And then as I got into my final year of university, I decided I didn't want to be a teacher anymore. I wanted to be a sports psychologist. So I sort of endeavoured to go through university. I did 2 master's degrees back to back, worked as a consultant in a school, and I always longed to go back to the States. As I sort of progressed through university, I became more open-minded to other parts of the world. COVID obviously happened midway through one of my master's degrees, so I couldn't do my research project. So in that period of having nothing on, like, I'd gone full on for like 8 years, like got back from America, enrolled at uni, went to the bank, started a business, had a part-time job. Like, I was juggling so many things and it was really cool. You don't realise how tired you are until you stop. So when I had all that free time to think, I was like, okay, is America actually the next step? So then I decided on Australia. I know you've asked me about Dubai, but obviously it circles round. So I decided that Australia was going to be the next step. Finished my master's degree, did 1 more year in my job, sort of got my affairs in order, sorted things out with a business in the UK, moved to Australia, and I learnt more in that period than the whole of university. I was only there 6 months, but I learned more in that 6 months than all the years of university combined, because I was detached from everything. Like, when you're in the eye of a storm, you just sort of, it's calm, and you can just sort of pick your next steps. But it was quite difficult because I was too engrossed in it. I couldn't see the light through the trees. So I needed to step out to sort of gain some perspective on like where I wanted my career to go. So I went to Australia, had an unbelievable time, learned a lot about myself, was like, okay, how do I navigate the next steps in my career? Because a lot of it had to do with education. I was like, I've invested so much time and money in education. Like, I'm in my 30s now. I don't want to continue to do this. Like, it's time to pay the piper. Like, I feel like I need to start paying back sort of in myself, like what I've paid back in myself. I need to start earning that back, recouping all that time and effort I've put in. So whilst I was in Australia, I travelled from England to Dubai to see my brother for 2 weeks, and then on to Perth. And Perth and Dubai couldn't be any more opposite. Like, Perth is horizontal. Like, WA, Western Australia, it means wait a while, because everything's just so slow. And I'm from Salford, like a pretty rough part of Greater Manchester, where everything's 100 miles an hour. To go from that to Dubai on holiday, obviously 100 miles an hour, to then go into Perth, I was like, I kind of wanted a slower pace of life, but I don't think I've quite earned it just yet. So the education side, the consulting within schools, working with children with neurodiversity, there was a huge market for it in Western Australia. Like, I cannot express to you like how much there is a need for it in Western Australia, probably around the world nowadays. People know about it more, so people are more attuned to like what the kids need. So there's a massive need for it. But I wanted to work more with high-end athletes. I want to do both. Like, I don't want to just exclude myself and just say I don't want to work with children anymore. Like, that is probably my greatest skill and strength, is working with kids. But I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't try working with more high-end athletes. So where better than Dubai? Athletes come and go. It's such a transient place that for me being in Dubai and someone saying, oh, I'm coming to Dubai, like the amount of connections and the people that have reached out to me just because I'm in Dubai. It's like Dubai is almost like a sales ploy in itself, just being in Dubai. Like people are attracted to you. You already put you on a pedestal. So from a business perspective, I was like, Dubai is going to be the place that can get me to where I need to be in a shorter amount of time. Like I back myself to get where I need to get to 5-10 years time. But if I can shorten that full circle, then I feel like Dubai is the best place for all that. So that's ultimately how I ended up here.
So you've done your degree in sports,
Yeah,
and also in psychology.
yeah.
How do they both work in your sessions?
That's a great question. So sports coaching is essentially, there's so much psychology that underpins it, whether you know it or not. And I think that was one of the things that I realised. So my degree's in sports coaching and school sport. We did a module on psychology, and it essentially was about motivation, or about how you can connect and motivate your athletes or whoever it is you're teaching. So I think if you are, for me, educators, it doesn't matter what topic it is, whether you're a sports coach or whether you're a geography teacher. For me, like being able to transfer knowledge to somebody and how you motivate people, I think they're all sort of intertwined. So what makes a good practitioner, in my opinion, is the ability to be reflective and remove the ego from what you do. So if I've got a class of 30 children, let's say, and 10 kids don't understand the learning objectives within a lesson, you know, when I was younger, I would have been like, oh, those 10 kids are a nightmare. They just don't listen. Like, why are they not listening? Whereas when you're a reflective practitioner, you go, okay, right, these 10 kids don't understand it. What am I doing wrong as to why they're not understanding? So I think good practitioners reflect on the job. So through that process of reflection, you sort of learn how to motivate, how to articulate, how to help one group, how to help that group. Because in a class of 30, you can have some extreme athletes and then some children who can't throw and catch, but they all are trying to do the same lesson. So if you're reflective and you are constantly looking what's working, what's not working, you learn how to navigate a lesson. So when I learned psychology, my first master's was in was in just psychology. That was more like brain chemistry, waves of therapy, whether it's cognitive behavioral therapy or like newer waves of therapy, like ACT therapy, which is acceptance commitment theory. That was more like what underpins psychology and behaviour in general. My second master's was in sports psychology. It wasn't until I started learning sports psychology where I realised, actually, I know what I'm doing. Like, it was the first time that I'd coached for, at this time, 14 years. So I'd consider myself an expert, but I never really considered myself an expert, if that makes sense. Like, I knew I was good at my job, but you don't really, like, you take for granted what you know sometimes. You almost expect everybody else to know. And when I started learning sports psychology about mechanisms of motivation, mechanisms of articulating information for people to understand, I was kind of like, I already do this. So I was already doing it without even knowing I was doing it. So that to me made me really like become confident in trusting my gut and my instincts. Like, I'm good at this, and it's because I care about what I do, and I'm always doing it for the good of the kids. So for me, learning psychology, there wasn't a lot of groundbreaking difference between what I did and what I started to do. But I suppose the beauty of studying and practicing at the same time is there's a massive disconnect, I think, between academia and practitioners. Like, the disconnect is crazy sometimes. It's like the educators are on the front line doing the thing, and they're trying to learn on the job, and the academics say, no, do it this way. But it's not tried and tested necessarily, and it's all dependent on the population they're working within and whether the circumstances have been manipulated to favour the results of a study. So I was in a fortunate position where if I learned something, I could go, let's try that out. So just a quick example, there's a thing like explicit learning versus implicit learning. I'm not sure you heard the two differences, but explicit is like very coach-centred coaching. So like, we're going to learn how to pick up a ball in lacrosse today. So the way you do that is you plant your weak foot next to the ball. You hold your right hand at the top of the stick, your left hand here. So it's a step-by-step process on how to get that ball into your lacrosse stick. That was kind of the way I always taught. I used to throw in the odd analogy here and there. Like, if you ever taught basketball, when you go reaching for the cookie jar. Like, that's a little analogy where you're saying reaching for the cookie jar. So that's something that I've used and it's worked. So I was like, I started to learn about the two different methodologies of explicit versus implicit, and how, not necessarily how they acquire information in the moment, it was more about skill under pressure, which I can go into. So with explicit, it's like there's a specific way on how you teach something, and then you teach it in that way, and the kids go off and try it. So I used to teach lacrosse to year 4 because they were of a certain level where they could pick it up. It's quite a complex sport. And I thought, I'm going to try out explicit versus implicit learning. I'm just going to do a little science experiment. Ran it by the head teacher. Was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. So I got class 1, and I taught them the traditional sense of how to pick up a lacrosse ball. And then I sort of timed how long it took X amount of kids to get it. Obviously, you've got to bear in mind that you know who your athletes are. But I was looking at how much of the class can get it and how long does it take everyone in the class to get it. I felt myself like talking a lot. The kids were like sort of losing me a little bit. You could see in their eyes, they were like, okay, I'm kind of getting it. And then when they went off and tried it through trial and error, they sort of slowly started to get it. So I'm a big believer in trying things anyway, like trial and error is massive. So they started to do it. And then after a bit of time, most of them got it. I was like, oh, yeah, it worked. The kids at this school are quite lucky that they've got a really good, like, sort of curriculum that builds them up to be able to acquire skills quite quickly. So, yeah, I would say on average, like, they've done all right. So the second class, I was like, okay, I'm going to try implicit learning. And one of the methods in implicit learning is analogy learning. So the idea behind it is if you teach a child via an analogy, that analogy is something that they already understand. So it's a pre-existing pathway in the brain. So if you can attach a skill to something that already exists, they're not overthinking anything. They're just going, I'm just doing this. So basically, I got all the lacrosse balls out, and I got hoops out. Just say it was the same lesson, but the way I delivered it, I said, right, kids, we're on the beach. I was like, see those balls? Sand. See that hoop? We're going to build a sandcastle in there. We've got to get the sand inside our shovel, and we're going to put it inside the bucket. And the kids were like, right. And they went, popped it in. And the amount of kids that got it almost straight away, I was just like, what? Like, pick the sand up, put it in the bucket. How long did that take me to explain? 20 seconds. And within a minute of the lesson, 85% of the kids are picking up a lacrosse ball. And it was just like, wow. And like I said, I always had kind of taught like that, but it wasn't like on a consistent basis. From that point on, I was like, right, I need to tell stories as much as I can in the lesson and try and think of something that I can already relate to with the kids, something that they already know. And can I attach this skill to something that I think they already know and get them to try it that way? And yeah, that was one of the main takes I've taken from sports psychology, which has helped me as a coach.
Now, this is a 2-part question, Ben. How can we stay up to date with the current methods, especially the ones that you are doing as coaches and teachers, and can we get it implemented in the places that we work, like schools, academies? I know it's a different ball game altogether, but schools have syllabus and such kind of teaching, implicit and explicit. It does make quite a difference when it comes to learning. Like you said, there are pathways of analogies they already have formed, so it's easy to implement the stuff that they're getting. How do you think we can make a change?
A conversation. I was very fortunate in the UK that my head teacher was like a massive forward thinker. Like, he didn't see education as black and white, like it's set in stone. Like, it's an old school curriculum developed for the Industrial Revolution, and now we're working with kids who are growing up in an internet age. So he didn't see education as fixed. It's like malleable over time. So he was kind of like, let's try and trial and error. So I think it has to be conversation. I think you have to do your research. If there's something that you're passionate about, let that passion shine through and sort of say, look, I've tried it in small doses in the class. Is there any way we can implement this sort of moving forward? So there was a key stage 1 lead in my old school who essentially what I did was play-based learning, but in PE. And the teachers used to watch me deliver lessons and was like, the success rate is crazy in your classes. And it very much aligns with play-based learning. So they developed it in reception. It worked. Give it a trial. And then they moved it into Key Stage 1. And now they're trying to implement it into Key Stage 2. So that's not going to happen if you don't have somebody at the top who's going to listen to your ideas. If you are well-read and you have an idea of what works and you are implementing small things within the classroom, you can go, look, this is the evidence of what I'm trying. Is there any way we can implement this on like a wider school project? So, look, for me, it's a hard question to answer because it was so easy for me to implement because I had all the trust in the world from the head teacher, and that helped. Like all the teachers backed what I did. So it's tough. I think it all starts with a conversation. Ultimately, like, can you get across what you're trying to implement in your sessions? Can you be passionate about it? And like, what difference is it going to make to the children's lives anyway that they already have? Like, how is that going to make a different impact? And it's sort of like, if you're going to come with an option to change, like, what is the direct result? Like, what is going to benefit the kids? And that's kind of like how I did it. In my school, it wasn't necessarily just the implicit versus explicit and learning skills quickly. Like for me, what I was doing in school, I was trying to develop emotional intelligence within the kids. Because I truly believe like the more people that are in tune with their feelings and the more people that are sort of emotionally intelligent, know how they come off in the real world, you know, I've got more empathy. You know, you're going to have a more conducive environment to sort of thrive. And so that's how I I wouldn't say sell because I wasn't selling anything, but that's how I got the head teacher to listen to me.
And the part where we can update ourselves, and how do you update both in sports and psychology?
So mainly, I use Google Scholar quite a lot, actually. So Google Scholar, you type in what it is you're looking for, a particular study, and then you can basically click on the options on the left, how recent you want the data to be. Now, some of the journal articles that you'll get on there you'll have to pay, but there's quite a lot of free PDFs. So when I did my dissertation in my last master's degree, I used a lot from Google Scholar. So yeah, like obviously some data is a bit outdated, but like I said, you can rank it, so you can go anything from 2004 onwards or anything from 2003 onwards. So that's what I use is Google Scholar. And I also I think people can get lost in self-development and learning. And one of the things I learned a lot when I was studying was the more I learned about psychology, the less I learned about myself. So because I started to second guess everything that I believed. So that was a massive turning point for me because I'd always trusted my gut. I trusted what I did. I'm very reflective. So I would just go with what I felt was right. And then when I started learning psychology, you start filling your head with all these ideas and this, that, and the other. And then you start to overthink the smallest thing. And I was like, I feel less in touch with myself. Like, it should develop emotional intelligence, you would argue, learn about psychology. But I think it can take you a little bit away from like your own gut and your own instinct. So when I went on to my second master's, I did it from a place of like, no, I know my stuff. I'm not going to have any, because you can obviously have biases. Like, if I'm going to read something, I'm going to read something that conform to my own bias. So you still got to be open-minded and go like, okay, but I think you have to have your own biases there, because if you do already have a preconceived bias, you can learn something new, but then you can also get better at the thing that you do. But whereas me, I was like so on the fence with everything in my first master's that I was being pulled in every direction. I didn't know what to believe. So I think having a good grounding point is important, and then obviously you can find academic work that sort of conforms with what you want to learn or what you want to improve. But yeah, I just use Google Scholar, but I just read LinkedIn's. I think it's really good. There's people on LinkedIn that put like a small post and then they'll sort of cite where they've got it from. Clicking on that is often good. Podcasts, obviously I learn from podcasts, but in terms of academia, Google Scholars tends to be my go-to. There's probably better ones out there, but it's just what I know.
Let's speak about mental skill and performance. How can we help athletes and students develop resilience?
Yeah, so I think resilience is built on doing hard things over and over and over and over again. It's like when you go to the gym and you lift a heavy weight and you pull a callus, like you sort of skin rips on your hands. Well, the more you do it, the more you build a callus on your hand. And I think the more you get challenged mentally, the more you build a callus to that mental challenge. So repetition, I think, in doing really difficult things is how you build resilience. So when I work with children of neurodiversity, if they're doing something that's really difficult, they tend to just want to quit because they don't like the way they feel, and because it's very difficult for them to express their emotions and they feel them quite intensely, they'll quit really early. When like that is the point, like that is where the most learning is being done. So for me, building resilience is doing the hard thing that you don't want to do over and over and over again. Like discipline is how, in my opinion, you develop that resilience, like doing things as difficult as you can. So if you've got a skill that you're not very good at, say for example, it's like missing a putt from 3 feet, practice that putt from 3 feet over and over and over and over and over again, and really listen to the internal dialogue, and then just try and find a way to reframe it. Because a lot of people overthink the easy skill, and they overthink the easy skill because the expectation that they put on themselves to do it is what is the burden. Like I speak to a lot of golfers who find a longer putt easier to do. It's like, oh, if I get this in, imagine that for a shot. And then they do it, and it's like, hey, I got really close. But if it's really close and they miss, like the fear of that mistake is what cripples people. So it's like trying to get out of your head, and the only way you get out of your head is if you keep doing things over and over again, learn what's going on, what's being said in your head, and then learn to combat it.
Well, you work with athletes and with children with neurodiversity. So what strategies do you use to maybe help them with their anxiety or stress when it comes to doing something difficult? Like you said that they quit when they cannot get it. It gets difficult for them. How do you or what do you put in place in order for them to be managing the stress and anxiety?
I try to get anyone I'm working with to reframe what's going on in the head, because like we're not, like no one's perfect. We all get a negative internal dialogue. Like I don't care how confident you are, like the internal voice sometimes it's there to protect you at the end of the day. So it's always going to try and look for the negatives, and we are wired like in that way. So it's just trying to reframe it. So anxiety and excitement are the same feeling. Like the only thing that determines how you react to the stimulus is your brain. So if you can reframe, so if I've ever felt anxious about something, I've been like, instead of going, oh, like if you draw attention to something, it feels worse. It's like, I mean, people talk about all the time, you say, don't think about a red elephant, and you think about a red elephant. Like if you draw attention to something, you're going to think about it. So I try and draw attention to something in a more positive light. Like I don't like people speaking out like, I'm not saying like, don't say you're anxious, but like, don't sit with that for very long. Okay, you're anxious, right? Okay, right. Are you not excited? Like, what about the positives? Like, what happens if it turns out like, instead of focusing on the negatives of the implications of what goes wrong, it's like you focus purely on the positive. And for me, I feel like positive psychology and just trying to reframe your experiences is a good starting point. And I think it's pretty simple, because a lot of good sports coaches, a lot of good teachers, through their own experiences, implement those kind of things anyway. So I think that's the best place to start, is trying to reframe your experiences when they've happened and after they've happened, but in the moment as well.
And the things that you do in order to maintain focus and concentration during a task.
I'm terrible. Like my focus and concentration outside of sport is not great. I'll be honest. Like I'm one of those, like if I'm engrossed in something, I could be doing it for 6 hours and I felt like I've been doing it 10 minutes, as I think most people are. Like try to get into that flow state. If I'm not interested, I find it really hard to focus. For me, everybody's different, but for me, when my focus and concentration is going, I have to remember why I'm doing it. Like, if I've got a strong enough why, like, why am I actually doing this? It helps me focus. So a little example, like, I trained for the Dubai Marathon in January. And honestly, on that 14-week journey, the amount of negative dialogue that was going on in my head, like, I was training in, like, late August, and it was just dreadful. Like, even at 9, at 10 at night, it was so hot, so humid. My body felt awful. I was like, oh, why am I actually doing this? Like, why am I doing it? But my why was, I was like, this is the why. Like, to feel this way and to, like, struggle. Like, I'm doing it for the struggle, because every time I go through the struggle, I'm getting stronger. So, like, for me, I have to remind myself of the why. So if you're doing something that's really, really hard, like, that hard period you're in now, like, suffer now, easy later. Like, it's trying to remember that. So, like, why are you trying to get stronger? What is it you're trying to achieve? So in that moment, for me, it's like staying as close to my why as possible helps me stay focused. And, like, I'm guilty of it, especially in a world where, you know, you can get instant gratification on your phone, or you can watch Netflix and there's like 1,000 shows you've never seen. You can go on TikTok and you've seen content you've never seen before. Like, the quick dopamine hit is just there at the end of your phone, like, at the end of your hand all the time. So I think going deeper into your why is, for me, how I personally stay focused. And I think athletes are quite, like, they're really driven. So for them to know their why, I don't think it's difficult to achieve. With children, it's a little bit harder. But it can be just simple, like, why are you working with me at the moment? Oh, because I'm always upsetting my friends. Well, that's obviously really important to you then, isn't it? Like, wanting to show up for your friends. Yeah. Well, like, let's think about the person you want to be for them. And that's your why. Like, every time you're not working in line with your why, can you check yourself and go, this is not who I want to be. Like, I want to be that person for my friends. So it's like trying to get to the why, and then reminding that person if the fault are like, no, this isn't in line with what you want to achieve.
And how does that work with children of neurodiversity?
I think it's about developing, like, emotional intelligence. I know I spoke about it before, but, like, I'm not diagnosed, by the way, with ADHD or autism, but, like, I'm pretty sure I've got ADHD. And I look at my history growing up and the things that my mum said I was like growing up. Like, you know, I think obviously there's a little bit of autism there with the majority of the world anyway, but I look at my behaviours growing up, and I didn't like necessarily drawing attention. Like, I don't think drawing attention to those things is great, because, like, I'm not saying a label is a good or a bad thing. Like, I don't really look at things in good or bad. Like, it's specific to the person. I think a diagnosis for me wouldn't have been a good idea, because I think I would have drew too much attention to it. I probably would have excused certain behaviours. What worked for me was, like, growing up, if I couldn't regulate my emotion, I would see how it impacted the people around me. And that didn't make me feel very good. And then I'd do it again. And then I'd do it again. And I'd keep doing it. And I was like, I'm pushing people further and further and further away. And then you become quite attuned to social dynamics, because you realise the impact that you have on people. And then I was like, I don't want my friends to feel like this in my company anymore. Like, winning a game's not that important. Like, it's not that deep. Some people do think, like, people's motivation's different. I play because I want to win. Some people play because it's fun. And everybody's is important because it's theirs. And like I said, I think for me, growing up, I just had to go through struggle, like, in social dynamics, to really learn, like, how can I fit in. And I didn't change who I was, like, necessarily to my core. Like, I just changed how I would act in certain situations that wasn't conducive to being, like, a good member of a team, or someone good in a friend group. Like, dominating conversation, dominating the team building, dominating this, dominating that. Like, everyone's got a say. Like, let everybody have a say. So, like, for children, like, children with neurodiversity, they're quite attuned to, like, what's going on, and they're really, really clever, so observant, and they know what's going on. It's like trying to talk through it to, like, understand, okay, this is happening, instead of going through it 50,000 times like I did to then figure it out. Let's talk about it now, and let's try and figure it out early on. So a lot of what I do, I put children, like, it's exposure therapy. I think I'm not an expert in the UAE. I can't sit here and say I'm an expert in education in the UAE because I'm not. But my observations are that if there's a certain trigger for a certain child, or there's triggers for children, because there's not a lot of staff that are sort of equipped to deal with the needs of that child, they'll remove the trigger. So a child can spend a full school year not being exposed to their trigger. My argument with that is, what happens when they are inevitably exposed to the trigger? Because you can't live in a perfect world, because we live in an imperfect world. The key is not to teach children how to make all the environment around them conducive to what they want. It's like, no, how can you deal in an imperfect world? And for me, the only way to do that is through exposure to the thing that they struggle with. And so, like, I'm a big believer in, I put children in difficult situations because I'm trained enough to go, okay, that's not right. Let's talk about it. How did it make you feel? Okay, can we try this next time? Can we close our eyes? Can we breathe? Can we go for a lap of the school? Like, but over here, they remove the trigger, and they're not removing the problem. They're just hiding it. It's like when you get crumbs and you shove them under your sofa. You know, when you move the sofa, the problem's still going to be there. Like, you got to deal with it. And I think what's going on is, like, okay, we don't have the time, the resources, this, that. They don't have the personnel to deal with this. Let's just remove it. But, you know, when they get to 14 and they've still not learned how to cope with something, you're like, well, you're 14 now. You should learn by now. Well, they've not had opportunities to learn. How can you expect a 14-year-old to learn if they've been denied the opportunity to learn? So what I do is I put children in situations where I expose them to their problems, so then they can learn how to deal with it. And the more you do that, like, it's a skill. Riding a bike is a skill. Throwing and catching the ball is a skill. Learning to deal with stress is a skill. The more you do it, the more you learn what works for you. And there's no right or wrong way. You find what works for you. And like, people have to learn themselves. And I just facilitate for them to learn for themselves, because I'm not going to be there to hold a hand for the rest of their life. And I make that very, very clear. Like, this is on you. You've got to find a way that works for you. I'm just going to expose you to it and sort of deal with it along that sort of, well, I'll be there to guide you through it. I'm quite passionate about this kind of thing, because like, I've been in education a long time, and I didn't realise the impact it had on a child's life until like 4 or 5 years had passed. And you sort of seeing the way they are and the way they're coping. And I've had feedback from parents, and like, for me, I just love what I do, and I'm just trying to do the best I can. And it's not until you, like, sit down and smell the roses every now and again, you go, wow, there's some real power to, like, the impact you can have on someone's life. If you care enough, like, you can make a massive difference. And like, for me, it's always just come from a place of, like, I facilitate a place in that child's life that I would have loved when I was younger. Like, if I could have, I would have been 5 years further ahead when I was 12 if I would have had somebody to guide me through it. So, like, I'm sort of filling that void. And I think a lot of good educators, they fill the void sort of that they didn't have growing up. Like, it's a pretty common denominator in people who tend to be quite passionate about what they do.
So how do we adapt our coaching styles to the needs to suit a child or a student, their personality, psychologically and physically?
There's multiple ways. So one of my main teaching pedagogies, and it's one that I've studied in depth. It's what I did my master's in. I've done talks in the UAE about this. It's something called cooperative learning. So cooperative learning, I'll give you a real world example of, like, me teaching, for example. So if I'm trying to get the kid, I'm trying to elicit a skill that I want the kids to learn, I feel like when you're learning, right, you can listen to somebody, you can watch somebody, and you can try it. Now, there's a certain percentage of information you're going to retain, like listening to it, watching it, trying it. You're going to retain the most information, trial and error, like we spoke about before. If you combine all those, you're obviously going to elicit an even better sort of outcome. I've learned this myself, and then I've studied it as well. The best way for anybody to obtain information and retain it and to become an expert in it is to teach it to somebody else. Like Einstein said, if you can't explain what you know to a 5-year-old, you're not an expert at it. Because you have to articulate. The world is full of people who can regurgitate stuff that they've read in a book, and they'll say words that they don't fully understand to sound intelligent. for me, the true sign of intelligence is, can you articulate what you're trying to say and anybody in a room can understand? That for me is what shows true intelligence. So when I work with kids, I get them to work in groups, and there's always an observer within the group, and the observer job is to take the coaching points and highlight if they've done it well or they've not done it well. And so I always have somebody coaching within a small group, and they all rotate. So I give kids in any PE lesson the opportunity to coach one another. It's like, they're not listening to what I say. Okay, so maybe you're not communicating in a way that works for them. So the way you're communicating it is the way that you like to be communicated to you, for you to understand. It's like, but now, as the facilitator for them, you've got to figure out how you can articulate it to them so that they understand. And it's obviously really difficult for children, but the more they do it, the more they thrive. So cooperative learning is essentially where you put children into groups and you designate roles, and they work collectively to achieve an outcome. So they achieve the outcome as individuals because it's a PE lesson, they're trying to learn a set skill, but they don't achieve it unless everybody achieves it. So you draw more attention to us versus I. So have you heard of Lego therapy?
No.
Lego therapy is like pretty useful, especially with neurodivergent children.
Lego bricks.
Yeah, Lego bricks. Yeah. So I don't know the ins and outs of this because I'm not I'm not a practitioner in this. I've just seen the uses of it, and I've also seen how it kind of relates to what I do. So in Lego therapy, if you have a group of 4 children, they all get given a role. So for example, you might have the bricks, so you're the supplier. You might have somebody reading the instructions, they're the project manager, and you might have somebody who's building it, and they're the builder. So neurodivergent children, especially if they see very narrow focus, is like, no, this is the way it has to be done. Like, and if it falls in that remit, they struggle to compute what's going on. They're not doing it right. So in that environment, your job is your job. You can't get involved in that. You can't get involved in this. You've just got to sit patiently and wait your turn. Same for this person, same for this person. They're all trying to achieve a collective goal, but they have set, defined roles within that to achieve the thing of building the tower or whatever it is they try to do. And then they rotate the roles. So then they're learning how to delegate. They're learning how to let somebody else have a voice. They're learning to be patient. They're learning to handle the frustration of someone getting it wrong. Because someone getting it wrong, it's not a bad thing. Through getting it wrong, you go, let's try this. I sometimes think doing something right first time is the worst thing you can do. It's like going through a maze from start to finish, and you go, oh, that was easy. If someone does it and goes the wrong way every time and then goes the right way at the end, you turn around to both people and go, who understands the maze more, you or them? The person who went the wrong way every time, they can tell you exactly, they understand the maze more than the person who did it first time around. So, understanding it's important, and it's okay to fail. It's fine. Kids have got to feel comfortable enough to go, it's okay to fail. And that small sort of environment where it's quite intimate, it's a good environment for that to work. So what I try to do is I try to manipulate that in a PE lesson with multiple groups. And sometimes I let kids be with their friends because they're more motivated when they're with their friends, but they know the minute they're messing around, it's like, okay, no, this isn't working now because you're not achieving the collective goal. And I think it's good, your athletes who are really, 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 really good, put them in the position where they're trying to better somebody else, and you see a totally different side to them. I've seen kids relish in that sort of opportunity to go and help somebody else. And for me, if I've got a group of kids, 30 kids, you've got a kid whose parents are quite sedentary, they don't go out, they don't play sport with them, they don't even play catch in the garden. And then there's another kid whose parents, one played for a football team and one was a GB gymnast. Obviously they're not gonna, the learning outcomes, they're gonna naturally get there quicker. I measure effort. How much effort are you giving me? And if a child's achieving the goals but they're not giving effort, I'm you're selling yourself short here, because you might be able to achieve this goal, but you're not learning anything by just doing it and going through the motions. Give it everything you've got and see how far you can get. And more often than not, it's go to teach somebody else how to do it. So for me, cooperative learning is one of the best ways to improve skill in general, skill acquisition, and social and emotional learning, because you're putting kids in a group where they've got to to succeed, they've all got to work together.
Children with confidence issues, how do you work with them?
Low-hanging fruit. I think picking the low-hanging fruit. So I've had this a lot, actually, in my career, a lot. Like, kids and dogs, right? I think their intuition is on another level. And what you can't do is you can't fake it. You can't fake it to a kid, you can't fake it to a dog. Like, they'll just know if you're lying. So, again, because I do stuff and I really care about them, like, they can sense that, so they feel safe. Ultimately, they feel safe. So I think anything is about connection. Like, if you can connect with people, forget what you're trying to achieve. You can have all the academia in the world, but if you can't get past the point of connection, then whatever you know is not going to be listened to anyway. So, like, connecting early on is, like, really, really important. Like, show you care, know something about them, their interest outside of sport, all that kind of stuff. So, like, that's, like, setting that foundation is paramount if you're going to try and build confidence with anyone. Like, setting a solid foundation. And then with kids, it's like, right, this is the learning outcome. More often than not, like, showing them the building blocks to get to that point is really important. So I like to do things in levels. So if it's learning how to throw a beanbag and catch on your neck, well, say that's level 5. Let's start with level 1, let them get them good at that. And it's just like playing, you gamify stuff. So, like, when you play a game, and this is how I articulate to the children, you get to level 1, yeah, easy that. You don't jump to level 5. You do level 2. And I think it's not just kids, actually. Like, the modern world now, because you've got, like, TikTok millionaires and YouTube millionaires, people want to go from 0 to billionaire overnight. Like, the average person that doesn't do that, and the people that have done that, you've seen the tip of the iceberg. You've not seen the full story. Like, they've had to go through every level and go through the hardship to get the tools necessary to do what they do in the high pressure moments. So for children building confidence, it's like, right, what's the low hanging fruit here? Right, doing this skill. Done it level 1? Yeah, perfect. That's amazing. Well done. Do you want to try level 2? I always put it in there on their terms, by the way. Like, degrees of freedom in psychology is really important. Like, nobody really, like, wants to do things on someone else's term. I always make people believe they're doing it on their terms. It's not. Like, it's what I want them to do, but I make them believe that, like, it's on their terms. So I'll be like, do you want to try level 2? I think we should give it a try here. What do you think? Yeah, I'll give level 2 a try. They're doing it on their terms. They try level 2. They might go through a few failures. All right, it's okay. Keep going. If you stay on level 2 for the rest of the lesson, I'm not bothered. And then you detach that expectation away. Then they just keep trying. And they're like, Mr. Daniels, done level 2. Go on then, show us. And then you make a big song and dance about it. Gonna try level 3? And before that, I'm just gonna stay on level 1. Yeah, I'm gonna give level 3 a try. And it's just like being really present at every stage of the journey and going, oh, that's amazing. And then at the end of the lesson, you're like, right, you're on level 3. So now, when you're at home, you know what you need to focus on to one day get to level 5. And it's just taking the pressure off and going, like, if you're giving me your best effort, then whatever you achieve is enough. And ultimately, what you find is that people will they'll exceed their expectations just by giving maximal effort, because what their perceived skill is to what it actually is, the night and day. Because the children who tend to lack in confidence, low self-esteem, high anxiety, quite neurotic, it's in their head. So, like, if you can give them real world evidence, like, they're not as bad as they think they are, then that is how you tame their negative inner voice, because you've got real world experience to go, I actually did that. So it's providing kids with as many opportunities to celebrate themselves as they can. And the low hanging fruit is a great way to start.
Would you do this with children who have mental challenges and anxiety and depression as well?
Yeah, it's more typical. It would work more with those kind of children, because, like, children with high confidence and, like, think everything's easy, they already think that anyway. Like, making a mistake is not going to change that. It's like, it's more catastrophic to the children who struggle with anxiety and depression. Like, that mistake, the fear of that mistake and looking silly, that is horrendous. So if you can try and remove that as much as you can, and just get them to try. Getting them to try is the hardest bit. But once you get that buy-in, like, I think it's fairly easy to build confidence, but the buy-in is, I think, in my experience, is the hard part.
How would you provide feedback to children?
To children,
yeah.
Individual. It's individual differences. I wouldn't provide any set of feedback to one person any set way. Like, I think the key to being a good educator is knowing how to educate the person. Like, we was talking about theories and methodologies and what's your coaching pedagogy and all this sort of stuff. Like, sometimes things don't work for, like, not everything works for the same person. So if it's somebody who is overly confident, I would try and ground them a little bit. I don't mean like knocking the confidence, like, I'm not about that, but I'm about grounding them a little bit and maybe getting them to set higher expectations of the conduct more so than achieving goals. But with, like I said, with younger children, if they are not giving me maximum effort, I'd be like, it's just not good enough. I was like, I don't care if you can't do the skill. Do you think the skill's important? The skill isn't important. Like, throwing and catching a beanbag is not going to determine where you end up in 25 years. But going through the hardship of not being able to do a skill and sulking about it will directly determine where you end up in 25 years. Like, this isn't about catching the beanbag. This is about how you can cope under pressure. And right now, you are not trying because you're that petrified of failing. And, like, if you live the rest of your life like that, you're going to be disappointed. Like, just try it, manage how you feel, and go again, and just keep going and keep going and keep going. And so, like I said, feedback comes in when it comes to how much effort they're applying. If they are applying the best effort they've got and they're still struggling, I'll be like, honestly, your work rate has been amazing today. So I was obviously very sports specific, but obviously I'm in a very sports specific environment. So I would always measure, like, for me, the biggest metric is effort. And that's how I provide my feedback. If a child's like coming over to me like, oh, I'm getting this, but blah, 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 then I can go into the deeper mechanisms of the movement. So we spoke before about analogy versus implicit versus explicit learning. The reason I got into that topic is because, I mean, sort of at university, was because I had to look at a skill that was being broken down, like a skill, a really easy skill. A professional athlete missed a putt to win a championship. And I had to basically analyse what went wrong. And I'm sure you've heard the term paralysis by analysis. So if you overthink something, what tends to happen is if you're not in a high stress environment, you're just playing for fun, like just chilling. This is easier. I'm not thinking about it because the consequences mean nothing. As soon as you apply like consequences and pressure, what tends to happen, they revert back to so you got your conscious versus your subconscious brain. If you are in your subconscious and you're doing things on autopilot, that is what flow state is. You don't get in flow state in your conscious brain. I don't think athletes thinking is a good thing. Like, you want 20 minutes to pass and it feels like 20 seconds. So with explicit learning, if you teach a step-by-step process and then 20 years down the line an athlete does something, if they're under pressure, they'll go back to that, right, okay, feet together. Okay, I'm going to align this, do this, do this, do this, do this. They over-analyse all the variables and then mess up. Paralysis by analysis, like I said. Whereas if you use an analogy and you just think about something dead simple, like, oh, sand, it's one thought and it's over. So I think with athletes who are like really, really good, I'd be like, okay, you can do this skill now. How can you do this skill under pressure? Like, what would you do in this environment? And it's like, I used to always, so when I used to assess children, it was the physical attributes, so like the physical literacy of how they can move their body, how they in tune with their body, etc., how they are in social dynamics, and then there was also like how they are emotionally, psychologically. Do they understand, like, if they're feeling a bit lethargic and there's not really a lot on it because they're quite competitive, how can they manipulate the circumstances in their own end and think, oh, this is a cup final, and like pretend that they are just to get a bit more motivation. And then you also have got tactical. So it's like with kids who really get the skill, it's like, okay, how do you apply this in a game? How would you apply this in this situation? How would you do this without the ball? And it's like you would just go deeper into it. Like, there's levels, isn't there? Like, there's achieving a skill, and then there's achieving a skill under pressure. Then there's doing it in a game. Then there's doing it in a final. And so, like, based on the kid, like, what they need to hear.
Giving your feedback and working with parents, especially in this region. How has that worked with you?
I've honestly had no issues. To be honest, I'm very upfront and I'm very open. Like, you can have a conversation with me if you've got concerns. Like, you can talk to me, but don't expect me to roll over and think that your way. Like, I will listen to people's opinions and advice, but ultimately, like, I'm the expert in the field. Like, I don't come into other people's places of work and tell you how to do a surgery. So it's like, you can't come and tell me how to do what I do. So it's not really happened in the UAE. And it's never really happened in my career. I think because I'm confident in what I do, and I'm like, the results will speak for themselves if you trust the process. If you don't trust the process, then you've got to find somebody else. So I've not really had to have those difficult conversations. But if a parent would come to me and they had the concerns, I'd obviously make them feel better. But I'll be like, this is the reason why I'm doing this. I'm not going to change. If you don't like it and you don't trust what I do, then you've got to find somebody else. And I'm totally okay with that, because we don't all think the same. People are going to think my methods are not right. That's cool. Like, I'm not here to educate everyone. I'm here to educate those who want to listen. So I'm just quite clinical. That has took a long time, by the way. I'm 33, so there was a time where I would want to please absolutely everybody, and a bit of feedback, I'd be distraught. I couldn't handle it. But now I'm like, no, I've seen enough how much my methods work, and those that buy into it reap the rewards, and those who don't, absolutely cool. There's nothing. I've detached my ego from what I do, and I think that comes with age. So I've not really had that. I would just say, like I said, I stand back. I don't bend over backwards. I think sometimes parents will find out, or can you bend this person to their will? And if you do, are you truly an expert in what you do? Because you're listening to someone who might be uninformed. So I'm not saying like I think I know it all, by the way. Like, I don't know everything. I know very little. I think the more educated you get, the more you realise you know nothing. Like, you're like, wow, I am miles off it. I'll always look for new methodologies, but in terms of like the core principles, they will remain the same.
What are your future plans, Ben?
Wow. Yeah, like I said, it's been a crazy journey. Like, it's like in the UK, educating teachers on how to like implement these methodologies and how to sort of inform like psychological principles to develop social and emotional intelligence. Like, it was incredible. And then Australia, like, it was an easy sell. Australia, like, I was people were trying to book me up like within like landing off the plane, but I quickly realised, like, I see Australia as something a bit further down the line. I want to sort of still work with kids. I love working with children, but I'm building a portfolio of professional athletes. And the one thing that I've realised over the last few months is that it's a cliche, but I love travelling. And like, I think the more perspective you have, the better you are whatever you do. I don't care what your job is. Like, the more perspective you have and the more you become attuned to individual differences and how complex individuals actually are, the better you are at doing the thing that you do. So I love like traveling the world, seeing different cultures, seeing how other people like going to a place where people are happy with nothing. Like, because I think the biggest flaw in the human condition is how quickly you become accustomed to something. Like, something for the first time, you're like, wow, this is incredible. 2 weeks down the line, you're acting as if you've had it all your life. And your brain just has a quick way of just getting comfortable super quick. So, like, like I said, I've come from not a lot, and I've always been very grateful for what I have. And when I've gone through periods of success, gratitude has always kept me grounded. Like, I'm just grateful in general. Like, I'm just grateful for what I have. And planning for the future, like, it's difficult because I'm relentless in my pursuit of wanting more and getting better. And I got lost in that from a younger age. And going to Australia made me realise, like, actually, I can still do that and still want stuff. But I've got to celebrate every small win along the way. And I've got to be grateful for what I have in the moment. So moving to Dubai and having to start again was, like, it was so scary. No job. Like, you know, staying with my brother. You know, he's my younger brother as well. I've always supported him. And now the shoe was on the other foot. It made me feel really uncomfortable. I was like, but, you know, you just got to go, okay, it's just the way it is. It made me, like, really appreciate everything again. And this time along the journey of, like, growing a business, every milestone I've tried to celebrate and take real stock of, because the journey is the best bit. I know it's a cliche that, but it actually is. Like achieving something, you get there and it's a bit of an anticlimax. The process of going through it is where the magic happens, in my opinion. So I've been really blessed that I've got to start again. And like, I've been in Dubai a year and I've had so many wins, and they are tiny wins, you know, but they're mine, and I'm really grateful for them. So everything that I'm doing comes from that place. So I'm trying to, like I said, I'm very constricted to what I can do. Like I earn money when I'm with clients, which is great, but it means like if I want to go on holiday, I'm not really earning. So because I had a business in the UK that was paying me all the time, I don't have that over here. So I'm trying to develop a revenue stream in which that I can actually be, I would say, I'm quite selective with my clients anyway. I won't just work with anybody. Like I've got a good enough client basis now where I can be selective with who I work with. But like I said, if I wanted to go on holiday, like next week for the Ramadan break, that's 2 weeks of earning loss that I'm taking. So I've recently paid for a mentorship to try and scale my business online and be a performance coach for people who are looking to elicit greater performance gains. I would say mainly in sport, but you know, performance is performance. If you try to perform in the boardroom or you try to perform on a pitch, you know, the mechanisms of what the brain goes through under stress, they're the same. It's just a different stressor. So I'm trying to do that at the moment, and one of the things that I'm learning is about making content, which is not my greatest skill. I wouldn't say I'm not creative, but putting yourself out there is, you know, scares me. And I've got to now practice what I preach, got to put my money where my mouth is. I can't go around teaching these kids, put yourself in uncomfortable positions and see how you handle it. I've actually got to do it. So, yeah, I'm trying to scale and get an online sort of presence, so that if I decided that I wanted to go to Bali for 2 weeks, I can put aside my clients and say I'm taking a 2-week break. And then that 2 weeks, I'm still earning an income working with my clients from anywhere around the world. So for me, it's not necessarily freedom of finances. I think obviously having more finances allows you more freedom. But for me, can I earn money from my laptop anywhere in the world? And, you know, I can make do with whatever that is. Obviously, I don't have set figures in my head as per now, but I just want that freedom to be able to travel the world and make a difference wherever I am and not really have to start again, because that was quite hard, building a reputation and then having to sort of prove yourself again. It's something that I've always had to do, but you get to a certain age, you're like, I feel like I've been on this road before. Like, can I get there a little bit quicker? So I think having an online presence allows you to sort of, it's like a passport around the world, I suppose. Like, this is what I do. I can do it anywhere. So that's sort of my plans moving forward.
Well, we wish you all the best. I love what you do. I love working with you as well. For the audience who don't know this, I work with Ben with Get Set Go Kids, and a wonderful gentleman, an amazing coach, and I get a lot of information from his sessions. So thank you so much for your time, Ben. Any advice you have for future athletes, young athletes and students alike?
Yeah, just don't avoid the hard things. Don't avoid the hard conversations. Be true to yourself. So I do something called mindfulness acceptance commitment therapy. So mindfulness essentially is about developing the self-awareness of somebody, developing your own morals, and you're guided by your own moral compass. I think those athletes that are guided by their own strong moral compass and really tap into their gut and how they feel and think about it consciously are the ones that typically do quite well. And I would just say, like, stay true to your gut. There's a lot of information out there. You can be easily led by people going down this way, but find what aligns with your values. And I think if you're always in accordance with your values as an athlete, as a person in general, you always are doing stuff with purpose. And when you do stuff with purpose, like, you're going to get better results. Like, doing something without purpose, it's not that it's pointless, but you're not going to get the results you want. So like I said, doing things with purpose that align with your values, and then just keep going. And like I said, doing hard things over and over and over again, and exposing yourself to the things that make you feel most uncomfortable is the way to sort of grow.